everybody, and welcome to another show of Wirecast Live. We have a great show for you today. I'm going to be interviewing Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson from streamingchurch.tv. They have, sometimes I always mess that up, but it's going to be a fun episode. We're going to be talking all about how to stream live church productions, how to make great online church services. Nobody knows this better than Phil and Steve. I'm excited. It's one of our first ever interviews that we're doing with two people at the same time. It should be a fun one. And leave a comment, just like Mr. Sean Whitaker did down there, in the Facebook or YouTube channels, and we'll be able to put them on screen as we go. All right, I'll see you after the opening credits. Welcome to another episode of Wirecast Live. I'm your host, Andrew Haley. Each week at this time, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, if you're watching this live, we go live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can join the conversation. You can leave comments. We try to bring on experts in their field and guests to unpack complex topics around live video and live video streaming. This is the place to be. We can unpack some topics that are very, very normally hard to understand, and we bring on the people that understand them best and help you with your live streaming needs. If you're trying to reach a greater audience on social platforms, if you're using Wirecast for the first time, or you're an expert hand at it for many years, this show should have something for you. Definitely join us on our social channels. That's the best way to join in the conversation, leave comments, ask questions. You can follow us on any of these social media channels at these different names: Telestream Wirecast on Facebook, Wirecast on Twitter, and Wirecast Tube on YouTube. Now, we also have an email list, and we'll be putting that up both here and at the end of the show. So if you're curious, we will send you an email and notify you when we go live if you prefer that way. We don't spam you. We just send you information about the show and occasionally let you know some interesting stuff. But usually it's about one email a week or so. And speaking of weeks, next week we are taking a break. We will not be doing the show. We'll be back in 2 weeks on, I believe, February 1st, if I'm right on that date. So we'll be back on February 1st with our next guest. So stay tuned for announcements on that guest and what that show will be. And we will, of course, send you an email when that's ready. But in the meantime, don't worry, don't tune in next week. We won't be here. I was going to be at a show in Florida for the FETC conference, so we did not book a show for that week. All right, now, before I bring on our guests for today, I would like to go through a couple news items. We're trying a new segment every week, and I'll be covering some of the news that's going on. So the first thing that you'll want to know is that Facebook has announced, let me pull this up real quick. Facebook has announced that they are trying out a new product called Watch Party. You can find this at streamingmedia.com. They have all the latest news, and we use that as one of our news sources. There's a quick article there you can find out about Facebook Watch Party. Now, this is basically Facebook's attempt to bring a sort of a new and emerging area of sort of media consumption where you can watch media or movies or your favorite TV shows with your friends at the same time. So you don't have to be sitting, historically you had to be on the same couch or in the same living room or in the same movie theater, but with the sort of growing bandwidth and the, improvements in video encoding and delivery, you can now stream movies with your friends, and they don't have to be in the same room with you. And you can watch and talk and use low latency video compression codecs like WebRTC to get real-time, interactions or reactions as you watch movies together. Should be really fun. They're piloting it with just a few groups on Facebook, but you'll probably start to see it rolled out as it gets more popular. This, of course, takes on other competitors which have been doing this for a while, like apps like YouTube's co-viewing app called Uptime, which is on iOS. You'll see a bunch of other ones. I would not be surprised if Netflix also launched something like this at some point, or maybe partnered with one of these apps. So this would be a very, very fun thing to do and to try out. So check out Uptime, and when Facebook rolls it out to a wider audience, you may want to check out Watch Party. It's going to be a cool thing. All right, speaking of video compression, and codecs. We had a great interview with one of the experts in the field, Jan Ozer, last week on this show. There were some technical difficulties. There were some audio issues. We had some problems with our streaming servers and so forth. This episode, Jan was kind enough to re-film the episode with us and redo the interview, and that should be posted shortly. Or Deborah Lee, is it posted now? Okay, should be up by next week if you're curious to get the whole thing. So that was a great conversation, especially the second time around when we had a little more chance to sit down and I was able to give him questions in a little bit more of an orderly manner. Sometimes when you're doing this stuff live, you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're putting out fires at the same time. So it doesn't always lead to the best of interviews. So thank you to Jan for sitting down with us and doing the interview over again, and that should be released next week. So check that out, and I highly encourage you to watch that. Should be lots of great information in there. And finally, this is kind of a fun, I don't know if it's fun for everybody involved, but it's an interesting one. TiVo is suing Comcast. I saw this on the front page as well of Streaming Media. It looks like there is some patent infringement lawsuits going on. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But the jockeying for IP and patents continues in this space, and you will see perhaps this may play out in some of the technology that either underlies TiVo or that Comcast is using in some of their boxes, and you may lose some functionality in one or the other, or someone may have to pay some licensing fees. All right, that's all I have for you for your news of the week, and I'll be back in 2 weeks with more news for you. All right, again, leave a comment if you have any. Looks like I see a few folks joining in. I'm actually unable to pull in the YouTube comments. I'm sorry. I'll have to figure, I think I just signed into the wrong YouTube account, and I'm not pulling those directly, but I do see the Facebook comments. So head over to Facebook/Telestream Wirecast, and I see Steve and Bill are there. Sorry, hold on one second, guys. So I just want to say hi to Ian and to Malang and Daryl. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And why don't I try putting on some of these comments here? It looks like we already have a question as well brought to us by Daryl. And let's see if I can get that up and running on our screen here using our handy dandy new blue titler. Let's see if I can get this. Looks like it's rendering on my machine. Either way, if I can't get them on screen, I'll just read them as we go. Okay, without further ado, I would like to bring on our guests who have been very patient with us from streamingchurch.tv, Phil Thompson and Mr. Steve Lacy, who have been doing church streaming and church production for a long time. They're very expert hands at this and have a lot of experience between them. And their company helps churches and houses of worship get their services and their broadcasts out to the people who want to see them online and abroad. So they have some very good advice. If this is something you or your church or your worship group is looking to do, then they're none better to help you and answer questions than these guys. Steve, Phil, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Hey, doing well. As usual, and as I'm sure you know, things are moving quickly with a live show right now, but we're going to just keep rolling and make sure we have a great show for everybody. So, how are you guys doing? You're joining us from Arizona in Tucson, if I'm not correct.
That's right, we are, and it's about 70 degrees outside right now.
70 degrees. Now, is that normal for this time of year, or are you having an unseasonably warm winter?
It's a little warm, but not. It's not unusual.
Not unusual. So, how did you guys come to be based out of Tucson, and how did streamingchurch.tv become based out of Tucson?
This guy here.
Yeah, probably. I worked in not far from you. Well, maybe a little. I was in Southern California working for a large aerospace company, and they moved us here to Tucson. So we jumped on. That's been 23 years ago or so.
This is before Streaming Church.
Yes, way before Streaming Church.
You were just a young buck.
Yeah, so my family moved from Southern California to the Tucson area, and we love it here and going to stay here. All the kids have been raised here, so that's how we got to Tucson.
Got it. So for those who are not familiar with Tucson or may never visit Tucson, what is Tucson known for? What would you say are its most recommending qualities?
Well, let's see. We have some great Mexican food.
All right.
Tucson's nice because we are about 1 million people or so. Phoenix is about 90 minutes up the road from us, and they're about 4 million people. And so if you like more of a slower pace, at least compared to Phoenix, and obviously compared to the LA area, Tucson's kind of a laid-back area. They've really developed the downtown the last few years. It's just a nice place. I don't know how far I want to go with this. Some people call us the new Portland.
Do we need to speak? I mean, we said it was 70 degrees, right? I mean, I talked to my sister in Atlanta this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, the weather, I think it sounds like that's a pretty good recommender right there. I was actually, the reason I was sort of leading in with this question was I was wondering if there's anything particular to streamingchurch.tv that the Tucson area is really sort of conducive to, or if because of the wonders of modern technology, you can run a business like streamingchurch.tv from anywhere, including Tucson, and that it doesn't necessarily require you to be centrally located in, say, the heart of the Bible Belt or somewhere where there's a high proportion of churches. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe that aspect and how you guys find customers and what types of services you guys offer to churches through your platform?
Stephen?
All right. So, we are an internet company, so we can operate from anywhere. So we kind of have our virtual office here, and so location really doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We provide support for the churches, so being in or around a time zone that most of the churches are in is helpful. Right. But we do have churches all over the world, and we help all the time.
Yeah, it all comes down to the World Wide Web and Google. Mm-hmm. Most people find us on Google. We've been doing this for years, and we do specialize in helping ministries, churches, nonprofits, and mainly because Steve and I, and the people that work with us, that's what we do. We are involved in our local churches. We're working as volunteers behind the scenes. I've got some pastoral experience as well. Steve's got leadership experience, and so we really specialize in helping churches, and we can do that anywhere because of the World Wide Web.
And if you don't mind, I'm pulling up your website now so people can take a look at this. If this is something that their church or house of worship is looking at into doing, you can find you at streamingchurch.tv. You guys have a very nice website. If you don't mind telling me, you don't have to say, but approximately how many churches work with you today?
We have several hundred churches working with us.
And what are all the services and sort of the platforms? What sort of, if you were to distill what streamingchurch.tv is about and what kind of value it brings to worship organizations, what would that be? How would you describe that?
We got involved with this trying to replicate the experience of going to church, but going to church online. So some of the things that churches are used to having, like greeters and ushers and people out front, we've incorporated some of those features into our platform so that you can kind of experience the service more than just sitting through the video and watching the video. You can actually participate. You can meet people. You can find out what the church is about, find out what people that go to the church are about.
Yeah, interactivity. We're really big on interactivity.
Yeah.
And so people. You can, if a church wants to use this, we have this platform that has chat features. You can see who's online with maps. There's some Bible software on it as well. There's ability to do things in Spanish or French, and there's another one. Did we have another language?
Portuguese.
And then there's also some back-end tools which we can get into later. I mean, we've got church management tools and website templates and actually a mobile app as well. But when it comes to streaming video, that's kind of the specialty that we have. And so we have tools that really, as Steve just said, kind of make it a virtual environment.
Yeah, our whole product base it grew up in the church, so it was designed for the church. And so there's some things that are geared for the church that you might not find in, going to YouTube or some of the other tools.
Right.
Yeah, so you mentioned interactivity, you mentioned online church sort of management services, and what is it that you feel, the topic of today's show is how to produce great online services. What is it that what does that mean to you, and what is the difference between a great online church service and just a good one or a poor one?
Well, I think you want me to take this?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, there's a lot of different factors. I mean, there's the factors of just making sure all your ducks are in a row and that your equipment's working properly. And there's a little checklist that we provide people that they can do when it comes to streaming, and their live encoders, hopefully Wirecast, and those kind of things. But there's also the aspect of, as Steve just mentioned, having a web host and connecting with people, being interactive with people. So when people do come on to view your stream, you have a church online host that can chat with those people, that can kind of show them around, so to speak, answer any questions they have, those type of things.
Yeah, as people arrive online, others know that they just showed up. Kind of like, you would get at church. You would see somebody walk through the front door and you know what was going on. So it's a real interactive, relational kind of thing. When people first started streaming, it was just getting the video out.
Right.
And we do have some ministries that use our product that don't take advantage of some of the interactive features and just have just the video.
Right.
But kind of our niche is, we feel like we understand the church. We understand how to, people, the pastors, the ministries, what they want to do, their goal is to grow the church. And so this is just an extension of their church onto the web, using some of the things that they've honed in-house to reach people.
Putting it online. And if I can kind of keep going here on this, you can also, it's a great tool to reach people. And so if you're really trying to reach your area where you live, where your church is at, in that 5-10 mile radius, you can use Google AdWords, you can use Facebook, you can do different things to target. And again, you're connecting with people that view, because as we know, today, if somebody is thinking about visiting a church, what do they do first? They usually go online, and they usually go to the website. And if you've got streaming video on your church's website, it's a great tool to kind of create windows for your church. I mean, the old days, you would walk into a church before the internet.
It's really intimidating.
Sure
any of your audience out there, it's intimidating to walk through a church for the first time. You don't know what to expect. I've got a good friend, he said the most uncomfortable time of his life was when he walked into a church. So we provided this opportunity that's non-threatening. You can go online, check it out for a couple of weeks, and if it works for you, come back and check it out in person.
And if it's done right, and this includes everybody on your team at the church, it's not just the person turning on Wirecast, but it's other people involved in ministry. If it's done right, you can really connect with newer people, and they, if they like what they see, if they like what they hear, if there's a connection made, the chances are, if they're looking for a local church and they're in your area, they're probably going to show up. We've seen that happen time and time again.
Yeah, so almost using online services as an outreach tool for your local community.
Absolutely. That's one function of it, which I think is a pretty important function.
Yeah.
And there's other opportunities you can use it for, obviously shut-ins and connecting with people that might be on vacation. We have a lot of people in the Tucson areas. We just were talking about Tucson, and we call them affectionately snowbirds. And the summertime, they fly away. But they also like to view the services in Tucson. So they log on, and they may be watching from somewhere in Minnesota, Ohio, or Wisconsin, or some godforsaken place like that. No, from Ohio.
Not godforsaken, because streaming church TV is very is there to help. So it looks like we have Jerry Scott, and he may have either he's a customer of yours and he misspelled it, or he's a customer of churchstreaming.tv, but either way is saying that his church enjoys using an online platform for streaming their services. And one of our other very active users here, Ian Anderson Gray, who we know and we've actually had on the show here, has been leaving lots of comments, and he's wondering if streaming church works with churches all across the world or just in the U.S.
So we're all across the world. We've got. We should sit down one day and count the continents or something.
Yeah.
But
we are global.
Yeah,
it's
good.
We've had people watch. We've had people view in China. In fact, the church that Steve attends, that I used to attend, there was actually people. Now, they weren't streaming from China, but they were actually viewing it from China. They were viewing it from other countries as well. And we never really figured all that out, but we thought it had something probably of an underground flavor to it or something.
Yeah. So, but there's churches, Australia, Africa.
Yeah,
it's all over.
It's the miracle of the World Wide Web.
So if you found, that people are viewing from everywhere, have you found also, that there are challenges in reaching people live? What are some of the common challenges that your customers face when they're just getting started, or even if they're further down the road with you, as they produce online services? Could you list a few that you've really seen and you could caution against, or maybe help people avoid right now if this is something they're embarking on?
Yeah, well, I think the number one you will relate to very well is if you don't have adequate bandwidth to send your stream out from your facility, you're going to get some buffering and skipping. So that's probably the number one thing. We'll have people, call us up Sunday morning and say, I'm getting some buffering and skipping. Well, let's do a speed test and find out. They'll say, I've got, 5 megs up and 100 megs down, and I pay the bill every month. And you do the test and you find, you've got 800K up and you don't quite. That's probably the number one issue that people run into. So what we recommend and they're at churches, so they've got open Wi-Fi and they've got several hundred people showing up in the building, and so we just caution them to kind of protect that bandwidth that you're going to need to stream with. You can either password protect your Wi-Fi or do some other things. That's probably the most common issue, and the issues that we see, I think, are going to be very similar to the issues that Wirecast customers will see as well.
Yeah, I think. Bandwidth is definitely a challenge for people who are sending the stream out. Also, if your computer doesn't have enough horsepower, if you're using something like Wirecast, which is a fine product, by the way.
Thank you.
If you're doing, well, I'm serious. It is. It's a great product. But if you're sending out multiple streams with Wirecast, or you're doing several things, or if you've got other things going on your wonderful computer, sometimes the poor little computer just can't keep up with it, and the CPU struggles, and then 80-90% or more, and then things start to fall apart for everybody, and that can be a challenge as well. Back in the old days, there was this thing called Flash Media Live Encoder.
Mm-hmm.
Which is still around. Has been updated in a couple centuries, but it's that was pretty simple encoder, and you could do a few things with it, and it didn't really soak up a lot of your computer resources. But when you start going with something like Wirecast, which is again a great product, but it does take more horsepower on your computer, so to speak, and so you have to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
and know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I think that as people that are brand new to it, it can sound intimidating and real technical, but if you've got a camera, you've got a computer, and you have an internet connection, I think a lot of people find out, wow, this was a lot simpler. It really works. I load Wirecast and put in the credentials, choose my destination of streamingchurch.tv.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it goes really, really smooth and really, really easy, and other times people have challenges.
Got it.
Yeah. It just depends. But that's one of the things we really try hard to do, Andrew, honestly, is because we work with churches ourselves and serve our own churches, we really have a heart for churches, and we really do try to help people, especially if they're new, or even if they're seasoned people. We've run across seasoned people that go with us and they have some kind of a problem. And we really do go out of our way to try to make sure that they're taken care of, and try to troubleshoot their problem for them if we can. And most of the time, we're pretty successful.
That's great. So Ian also is asking, isn't copyright a big issue for streaming church services? How do you guys address that?
Well, there's generally, if you get a CCLI license, the streaming license, that usually solves any copyright issues. Now, if you're going to do music that's outside of that licensing boundaries, then you're talking with BMI, you're talking some other ones. I was in broadcasting, and it was so long ago I can't remember. But there's different licenses you can get if you're gonna be playing, secular music, which some churches do. So those license that you can purchase will take care of most of those problems.
Got it.
All right. Licensing can run into an issue, and you want to have your CCLI license in place. Probably the biggest problem we run into this is with people broadcasting to YouTube or Facebook to a certain degree.
Even Facebook at times.
YouTube's very diligent about, and they don't care whether you have a CCLI license or not. They'll often take you down in the middle of services. That another thing kind of sets us apart from some of the bigger players out there that stream everything.
Got it. Jerry mentions that his biggest challenge is getting a good quality sound out to their online viewers. Online viewers don't get the natural effects of the building and the actual audience and all sort of the soundscape that involves being there in person. So the mix for, I assume, the online audience should be very different from the one that is in the house, particularly if it's all amplified. How do you recommend that, and what have you seen? Have you seen some ways to overcome that challenge and create a great mix for both audiences?
I'll jump in and I'll let Steve finish it up. But as you know, Andrew, audio is probably the most important thing when it comes to streaming video. I mean, and I say that sincerely. I mean, video obviously is important. Lighting's very important, but you can have an average video, but if your audio is good, people will stick around and they'll enjoy the experience. You can have the best video in the world, the most ultra high definition stream, and if your audio is poor, it's worthless. And so there are some ways to overcome that. You want to jump in?
So I'll jump in. So what some of the churches are doing is, in my home church, for example, what we do is we take a feed from the soundboard and we have another mixer. And so the guy that's mixing for the web is very different from the guy that's mixing for the house, because the house is going to, the bass is going to reverberate, and it's going to, it's just a really different mix. So if you have the opportunity, it's not a requirement, but it does add a bit. If you have the opportunity to add another mixer and mix for the web, and our mixer guy, he's got a computer with some, just some nice speakers on it. And so he'll do the mix based on what everyone's hearing on their computers. And it sounds pretty good.
He does a good job. But now you guys used to have what we called an isolator. Are they still using that or not?
I don't know that. And we would do heavy use of picking up choir mics and stuff to get
ambient sound.
The sound of, as you're in person there, the sounds that other people are going to hear. So we get choir mics over the audience and that sort of thing.
Yeah, hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I may be wrong about this, but at one point, and I used to work at Steve's church, we had an isolator. So we had, you've got your microphones and everything on your platform, but then they would go to an isolator, and one would go over to the house mix, and the other side would go to the internet, the streaming mix. And so that was one way that they would really tweak it and make it really sound good online. And Mark Small always does a good job. I don't know if Mark still does that or not, but he always does a good job. But as Steve just mentioned, you can still go out of your mixer and into a different mixer and do some post, so to speak, mixing, and listen to it online as it's happening, and really tweak it. Because you're right, it does sound different online. It's going through the internet, and you've got a whole different set of variables there.
And we've got just the range of customers. So there's people with single camera and just really simple setups, and then we've got all the way to the really high end. So just
we don't recommend taking. I mean, some people have cameras that have the microphones on them. We don't recommend that usually, because that's going to pick up everything else, and if somebody's close by coughing or having allergy attacks, it's not going to sound too good.
So at a minimum, I would assume you'd recommend 2 to 3 microphones if somebody was going to attempt to stream an online service. Maybe one for the main speakers or the podium, one as an ambient mic for the room, for the audience, for crowd questions or reactions, and then possibly one if there's somehow, at least if maybe it's a microphone, maybe it's a mix of music or the feed. Would that sound about right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it just depends on your band. I mean, if you have a choir or a band or just somebody up with a guitar or a keyboard, it just depends. I mean, in the churches I'm experienced with, we've got a whole band up there.
Yeah, there's a dozen microphones.
So there's tons of microphones. And again, they're all going into a mixer, obviously, and then from there you can get the line out and begin to tweak that in another mixer maybe.
Right. Okay. And as far as cameras, and again, I'm just trying to get sort of a bare minimum understanding of where you think churches should kind of begin at. Obviously, you can do audio only. Do you have some of your customers that do only audio?
We've had some. Do we have anybody currently doing audio only? I'm not sure.
We still may have some.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's been done, and it can be done if there's low bandwidth and if it's just a way to get started. But assuming you want to actually get started with video and audio, again, do you recommend churches, let's assume a low budget, 500 or less in terms of the congregation, would you recommend they start with one camera or at a minimum two? Like how would you sort of, just to get a base level of decent quality for online viewers?
We talk about, we started at our church with just a camcorder, a single camcorder, and you just grow from there. So we recommend just jump in, where you can, and you can always upgrade and add more cameras. But
and you've got now you have a really nice camcorder. Of course, your church uses what they're using. Well, they're using something. They used to use Canons, but what Steve's trying to say is. And I've said this too, start with where you're at. I mean, and actually some of the consumer grade camcorders are pretty good. I'm surprised. But you can do one camera, and if somebody pays attention to the details, I mean, you don't just set it and forget it and walk away. But if you have somebody that's going to, man that camera, if you're going that route, you can put together a good presentation. In fact, we were talking to somebody just the other day who was doing something with one camera, and he said he liked it better because it was just, the one camera on the one person, and maybe there was a little bit of an adjustment on it at times, but there wasn't 3 or 4 different cameras all over the place. He thought was a little bit distracting. That might have been Mike. But I guess the point is here, Andrew, to answer your question, is there's no like right way to do it other than, do it as best you can. Mm-hmm. But I think what Steve said, if you're starting off, start with what you've got and let it grow.
Right. Go from there. I think that's really good advice, Steve. Jerry was, I think, wanting to circle back and talk quickly about the one mixer, two mixer question. And his question specifically says, would or should I come out of mixer 1 and go to mixer 2 as one sound or as individual channels? And just as an addendum there, using actually, I can speak from Wirecast's perspective, using certain mixers or audio interfaces like Tascams, Wirecast can now take in channels through USB individually. So if you plug microphone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you will see those individually up to 16 channels inside Wirecast and be able to mix those independently that way. So bearing that in mind, if you are using Wirecast, do you guys recommend a two mixer setup like he's suggesting here, and down mixing and having one sort of, or as a stereo, or possibly mixing in channels individually at each stage?
My opinion would be, if you can do individual channels, go for it.
Right.
If you have the equipment and you can do it, that's ideal. That would be ideal in my opinion.
Okay.
But again, there's other ways to do it, and it may not be quite as clean as mixing individual channels, but maybe you could mix a few channels, maybe not every one, but a few, depending on your music part and then your audio part, your vocals.
Right.
That would be my take on it. I don't know what Steve's thoughts are.
I'd say the same thing.
If you got somebody that can do that, mixing sound. I used to direct. I was a music director for a long time, which goes to tell you the quality of churches I used to be at. But you can, it takes a little bit. It takes an ear. To mix sound, as I'm sure he would probably tell you. And so if you've got somebody that's got the ear, to mix sound and has got some knowledge and is willing to grow in that knowledge and grow in some understanding, you can have a hit. It can be an awesome thing. If you've got people that volunteer and you're asking them to mix 16 channels, that could be a disaster. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind. It just depends on who's involved and who's actually got the talent, got the ear for it, as opposed to as many churches have volunteers, and some of them do a great job, and some volunteers, they want to help, but they just struggle in certain areas.
That's understandable.
You were one of those guys?
I was one of those. I said, Steve, how about you mixing sound? You look like you can handle this. And weeks later, like, yeah, we don't need you anymore.
Steve, we got something else for you to do, actually. We think you'd be really good at not mixing sound.
Yes.
So, all right. So we're almost out of time here. I noticed something else in the chat and something that comes up a lot. Restreaming to, say, Facebook Live or to YouTube. How many churches not only stream to your platform where, it looks like there's a built-in chat feature, there's a bunch of interactivity features, you can post news and things like that, and there can be moderators, so it's very controlled, which is nice, but then also taking that out to other social platforms and destinations is do you see a lot of your churches doing that, and is that a service you guys offer?
We do offer that, and we do see more and more churches doing that, and I think that's great. I think, as Steve mentioned earlier in the broadcast here, sometimes Facebook will shut you down or YouTube will shut you down because they have determined in their infinite wisdom and knowledge that the song that you wrote yourself is a violation of copyright.
Yeah, I'm sure it's all about it. But no, we are seeing, churches are doing that more and more. So it's just last night, it was Wednesday night, we're having some people panic because Facebook was not, I hadn't seen it before, but Facebook was down for sending out the live stream. Yeah, but we provide tools to allow them to send to multiple sources, and within Wirecast you can do that as well. So we try to make it as easy as possible to get their stream out to everywhere they want it to be viewed.
Yeah,
and I've noticed with a paid service, particularly for churches, one thing we always recommend is if you're paying for a service, YouTube, Facebook, obviously that's free and you get what you pay for. You may go down, you're not going to get anyone on the phone. There's nobody to talk to, nobody to walk you through it if you're having problems. Not necessarily the case with paid services like your service. So do you guys also offer support? Is that one of the values that somebody gets if they do sign up for a paid service like yours?
That's actually one of our biggest deals. As we mentioned earlier, we have a real heart for the church. I joke around a lot and tease people, but we really do love the church. We love serving churches. I do. Steve does. Our whole team does. And we're available 7 days a week. We're available especially on the weekends and Sunday mornings, in which I don't think there are too many of those people out there that are available Sunday mornings. You want to chat with us at streamingchurch.tv. You can chat. You can call us.
Yeah.
You can email us.
Yeah, we've helped some, as you may have experienced as well, some pretty panicked people. Service starts in 4 minutes and 30 seconds, right, and it's not working. So we walk them through it and get things going for them. So yeah, we're here to help.
What did your family say when you told them you wanted to get into a business where you would have to work on weekends?
Steve didn't tell me that. He left that part out.
All right, so last question of the day. Just kind of, if somebody a church wants to get started doing this, and again, start with where they're at, maybe 1 or 2 cameras, maybe a few microphones, a mixer or something, just and some volunteers. Where do you think, and they don't have any of this yet, what do you think sort of the minimum budget they should ask their board or their vestry board for, or their pastor, to set aside to kind of undertake this? Where do you sort of say, look, don't try this unless you're willing to spend X amount of dollars just to get started? It doesn't have to be fancy, but to afford your subscription and some of the equipment that they might need to get up and running. Do you guys have a ballpark that you advise people?
We have an equipment recommendation that we publish on our website, and I think what with a lot of churches will say, well, you need a camera, you need a computer. I'm like, well, we've got a computer, and the computer's got to meet these certain requirements, or nothing very special. And they go, oh, yeah, we got a computer that'll do that. We find most churches already have most of the equipment in place. Now, if they want to create a better production, then there's budgets you can set up for that. But we've really found that churches can really get streaming with very little.
Yeah, I mean, if you've already got a decent computer and you've got, I mean, we mentioned earlier about a consumer grade camcorder. I mean, those will work, especially the newer ones. Don't look too bad. The big deal with cameras is lighting. Lighting and how far away you are from your subject. And so, if you have a relatively consumer grade camcorder, if you're close to your subject, it will have a nice. You can have a nice video picture. So, yeah, that's it. Again, it could be. You could be up and streaming for $500 or $600 or less, or more if you depending on what you want to do.
Right. It's a tough one. We say, well, which car do I need?
Right.
I need the Mercedes. It's going to do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. But the other guy, I need 100K or so. But another guy,
Focus works fine.
Yeah.
So, but not to plug ourselves, but we will. I mean, if you go to streamingchurch.tv and you go to the FAQ area on the website, there's kind of an equipment recommendation list.
Then we have a good, better, best option,
kind of
so
things.
you can kind of position where you want. And
so it's good. I mean, I'm working a little part-time gig for a little church I have, and we just are starting the stream, and we've already got a camera we're using. We've already got a computer. We had to get a little video capture device, but we had the internet, and we already had lights and everything. There it is. And we're ready to rock and roll. Now we won't stay that way. We'll eventually get better equipment, but it just kind of depends on your budget. And that's, as Steve said earlier, it just depends on your budget, and you can start where you're at and work your way up, and that to me makes all the difference in the world.
Okay, yeah, well, there it is. It's on the church streaming website, streamingchurch.tv website. I'm sure your customers must get that confused too sometimes. I'm sorry. You can head to the facts. Sorry. Go ahead. Cut you off, Steve.
A long time. But
yes, So you can head to streamingchurch.tv. You can go to the facts, and then just about halfway down the page looks like what is the recommended equipment, camera, computer, encoder to stream my services. And then right under there looks like there's the equipment recommendation list, which pops up the list of good, better, best, which is fantastic. Where I guess streamingchurch.tv is the best place to get a hold of you guys. Did we throw up a contact card for them if they have any questions?
Yeah, that's the website, streamingchurch.tv. You can always call the toll-free number. Willing to talk if you're interested in streaming video. If you have questions, always available to talk.
Support at streamingchurch.tv as well.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Steve.
Perfect. And Deborah Lee, did you want to throw up that card full screen for folks?
Or not.
Okay, hold on. We'll throw that up in just a second. Steve, Phil, we're out of time. I want to say thank you so much for being on the show today and covering this topic. I think you really provided some valuable information for folks in our audience who want to learn more about this and maybe get started streaming their own church services and making them great. There's the full screen card, and as you can see, you guys can reach out to Phil or the Streaming Church team on Twitter, Facebook, or at their website. And of course, they said they even have a phone number you can call. So boom, there you go. And then it looks, so we will definitely be in touch soon with you guys and reach out to you guys if there's further questions that come from our audience about this. And thanks again for being on the show. You guys also have a podcast, right?
We do. It's called Church Solutions Podcast. You can go to iTunes and look for Church Solutions Podcast. We're on what are we at? We're on YouTube as well, and
iTunes and wherever.
Church Solutions Podcast. All right. Well, I'm looking forward. I was there on that show last month, and I'd love to come on again at some point. And I really appreciate your guys' time, and thank you so much. We'll be talking with you again soon, I hope.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Have a good day. All right, so that was Phil Thompson and Steve Lacy from streamingchurch.tv, and they are, just as you can see, really nice gentlemen who have been doing this for quite some time, and they really do know what makes a great church service and how to stream your services online and what you can do to make those better. I love their tips about getting together on the same page with your team. And that includes everybody. I mean, you have a lot of volunteers probably at your house of worship or, in your congregation that do different things during the services. Just even the simple thing of them knowing where the camera is and what it's pointed at can be helpful when somebody's reading an announcement or reading a passage or something. I think that was great advice. The audio mixing that they talked about was also super helpful. So you can see just they really do know what they've been doing, and they've been doing this for so long that if you have questions and this is something you want to undertake, you should certainly reach out to them. We encourage that. And they're great partners here with Wirecast, and we appreciate working with them. So thanks again to them for coming on the show today, and I hope this was helpful for you guys, that this particular topic. It's not something we get into every time on this show. All right, I'd like to quickly thank our other partners that make this possible. We use a lot of their equipment and technology on this show. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in each week and asking questions. There were some great comments. We were able to throw up some of the live comments on screen. I'll actually refresh these. And a particular shout out to Jerry and Ian and Deb and Lutz and Daryl, who were great and really put some great questions there. You can, of course, get notified or follow us on social media at any of these locations. You can also sign up for our email list, which is another great way to just get a direct email to your inbox. And don't forget, we are off next week. No show next week. We will be back February 1st with a brand new show for you and a lot more good stuff. So I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. And if we have a chance, we might slip in a couple Wirecast Universities or some off-the-cuff live streams in between now. And really the only way to get notified when we do those is either be subscribed to the live notifications on Facebook or YouTube, or to get on that email list, and we'll send out a quick notice if we happen to be going live. But we'll see what we have time for, depending on it. All right, I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. This has been Wirecast Live.